What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It is Tuesday afternoon and it is 4 p.m. and that means it's time for the Just Gonna Say It podcast. I hope you all are having a great week. We are having a great week around here. It's been really busy, making a lot of stuff, doing a lot of stuff in the shop. It's been super fun. Getting a lot done, actually. Things are good. Yeah, so we're gonna talk about some interesting stuff today. There's a video that came out. I don't know if it was yesterday, a couple days ago. I don't know, whatever, over the weekend maybe. About basically PRS. Paul Reed Smith was making a video about how much wood matters in an electric guitar, and so I want to talk about it because oftentimes I don't really subscribe to a lot of what he says because I think it's a lot of marketing, but I really, really like the last couple of videos that he's done. This video and the one with Rick Beato about pickups. I think they were both very, very well done. I'm not totally down with everything. We'll get into it. But I think he's going to make my point in a few different ways. And so I want to talk about that. And so we'll discuss that stuff. Before we get started, I want to thank my Patreon supporters and my YouTube members. Those of you who have joined the little buttons right down here, you support the channel, so we appreciate that. And all of you who support Dylan Talks Tone buying pickups and etc. All of these live streams are ad free. So to support the channel with no ads during the live streams, you can use a super chat to ask a question, or you can just use a regular ask a question just with a bunch of question marks in front of it. But if you use a super chat, we'll drop what we're doing and we'll ask that right away or answer that right away. You can also go to DylanTalksTone.com. You can buy pickups and various things. And yeah, we just sold a guitar today, so that's really cool. We sold one of the Gasser models, so we've only got one of those left, which is pretty cool. The gold top's left if you want that thing. And let's see what else. We got new pickups out down over there at Dylan Talks Tone. We've got the Widowmaker Telecaster pickups, and the humbucker size P90s are back out again. And we can do all the different cool acrylic tops on both of those models. So if you want to do something, with that, you're welcome to. If you want something super cool and super cool and custom, you can totally do that. Okay, so let's talk about this video. Oh, hang on. We got a super chat. Let's see. We got a super chat from Dastardly Dave. Thank you so much. Ad free for me and RIP Ozzy. Absolutely. Yeah, that just hit the interwebs a few minutes ago, didn't it? Probably an hour or so ago, maybe. Yeah, we were actually, Brianna and I were working in the office, and she's like, hey, I think Ozzy died. So, yeah. Okay. So, let's talk about this video. If you haven't seen it yet, Paul Reed Smith is doing a series basically on, I think, guitar building pretty much, and how his philosophy of guitar building. And I think this is one of the first episodes, and it's talking about wood. And a lot of people want to go down this whole thing about how he believes in Tonewood and this and that and this and that. You can watch that video. And the very first thing I'll say is, unless I missed it, and I watched it 3 times, I don't think he actually ever says Tonewood in the video at all. Which is interesting. He does refer to tone when he is tapping on wood. We will get to that in a minute. But he does the tone of this wood as he's tapping on it. We'll get to that in a minute. But he doesn't call it tone wood throughout the whole video. And so I want to just kind of go through this and talk about this because I think it's very, very interesting. His approach to this and his whole reason for making this video. And I am so glad that he did. Because not only does it really talk about what's really important about the wood in an electric guitar, but it also really kind of summarizes why Paul Reed Smith's guitars cost so much. One of the reasons, because he does some things very specifically. So he talks about how the wood in a guitar is important, right? It is the structure of the instrument, which, duh, right? It's the guitar. It is the guitar. And so, he holds up some wood and he's like, if this was wet or if this was soft or if this was whatever, it just wouldn't work. So the wood has to be right, which is totally true. It totally makes sense, right? And then he proceeds to do some tap tests on some wood, which he does it pretty quickly. Personally, I think as a marketing stunt. He talks about how you have to find the tone of each wood and then put it together. But I don't know if you noticed, but when he tapped on the neck blank, he tapped on one side and it sounded one way, and he tapped on the other side and it sounded another way. So which one do you pick? Right? Like, you can tap 3 different places on the same piece of wood and it'll sound different. So whatever that means, I think it's stupid. I'm just going to say it. I think it's stupid, but it doesn't really matter. But he talked about, and I think he used the word, the caliber of materials. The caliber of materials that are used in a quality electric guitar are important. And when you're buying a $200 guitar from China, the caliber of materials in the guitar are different. We did a video a few months ago, or a couple years ago now, actually, about Gibson versus Epiphone and the difference between the two guitars. Not whether one was better or not, just the difference between them. And we talked about the source of where the wood comes from. And a lot of people thought I was talking about Tonewood, and I'm not. I'm talking about the actual quality of the material. You know, when you go to Home Depot and you buy a 2x4, you can buy a couple of different grades. And one's going to be pretty straight, not totally straight. And the other one's going to be you're going to have to pick through them and find a good one to even get what you need to get done, right? It's the same exact thing, only way more exacting, a lot more science behind it, a lot more paying attention to it, a lot more factors in it. So basically the quality of the wood, and what it really comes down to is the first reason he talked about was not anything to do with tone. It was to do with the survival of the instrument, because and then he talked about 72 degrees and 45% humidity. Okay. That's what they try to manufacture all their guitars in. And they bring wood in. Sometimes the wood comes to them wet. They have to dry it. Then they have to re-dry it. And then they have to allow it to settle back to this 72 degrees and 45% humidity. And it's all about the manufacturing process. It's all about the stability of the wood during the manufacturing process that makes a more stable guitar for the rest of its life. If you build a guitar that's wet with too high of a moisture content, then the guitar will change and move as it dries out in the future after it's already a guitar. And you don't want that. You want all that to be done beforehand. One of the things I think that's interesting, and the reason it reflects in the cost of a Paul Reed Smith guitar, is because the way they do it, they've got all these drying rooms, and they have a huge amount of inventory of wood sitting. Okay. So when we're talking about manufacturing costs, for those of you who may not be familiar with how stuff is made, but one of the calculations that goes into how much something costs to make, it has to do with I don't know what the exact term is for it, but basically it's like, okay, I need this many square feet, right, to do what I need to do. And it costs this many dollars a square foot, which means that I need each dollar of square foot to be making X amount of dollars of money for me to be able to remain profitable. That's one of the factors. So if you have a huge amount of square footage with just wood just sitting there and not being, quote unquote, a working part of the factory, even though it is, he's got thousands of square feet of just wood just sitting. But it's part of this process, and it's part of the end result. It's part of the end result of this guitar, which is better because of it. And so that's honestly partly what you're paying for. And to be honest with you, that's when you buy a higher quality piece of wood, you can go to any lumber yard and buy a piece of swamp ash that has it in stock. But is it good? Is it heavy? First of all, is it fit to be made a guitar, grain wise and all, the structure of it. But also, is it dry? You don't know unless you test that stuff and go through all that process, which they do. And I think that's really, and I know other guitar builders do it. I know they do it, but the scale at which they do it and the precision that they do it is pretty neat. And I've never actually, I saw that they did a factory tour of PRS a few years ago. And I saw that then, and I was like, that's very interesting that they dedicate that many square foot of workspace to just wood sitting so that the wood is right. He feels that's really, really important. And I think that's really, really cool. But it also adds to the cost. Let's see. Let's get caught up on some comments here because maybe people are chatting about this and we want to make sure we don't miss anybody. I'm so sick of the popular internet think that wood is irrelevant. The existence of hollow bodies and semi-hollows and that even someone isn't a guitarist can hear the difference is the end of it. Yeah, well, the problem is there is an acoustic instrument is different. It works differently. You're not moving air with an electric guitar. You're just not. So there you go. It was interesting to hear what they do at the beginning with wood and shop conditions. Yeah, exactly. I would love to see an engineer's analysis of how different wood types absorb different frequencies of vibrate. Yeah, you could go down all that road. This has nothing to do with that. This has nothing to do with that. This is not what we're talking about. We're not talking about Tonewood. It's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the quality of materials in the instrument. And it's really, really important. One of the things that he talked about was the fact that every different kind of wood absorbs moisture and dries at a different rate. Okay. So even within mahogany species, which there's like 250 of them, that wood dries and absorbs moisture at different rates. And so you're going to end up with, and it's going to have differing densities across the same tree, right? And so really what we're concerned with more than anything here is stability and repeatability. They want to have a standard that their guitars are built to, but then they use all of what they're talking about with all this drying and redrying and all that stuff and letting it sit and all that to get as consistent as possible so that they can have a stable guitar that doesn't have to be tuned all the time, the truss rod doesn't have to move. It's funny. I watched this video last night for the first time and I pulled my Silver Sky off the wall and I was like, he's right. I never have to touch this guitar. This is one of the guitars that I own that I never have to touch. I don't ever have to touch the truss rod. I never have to, it barely goes out of tune. It's awesome. And actually I have another PRS and I checked it too. And it's the same thing. It just never moves. It's like really, really good. And that makes sense, right? And then mechanically, tonally wise, mechanically, there's nothing ever loose. You never have a loose neck pocket. You never have a loose anything because all of that stuff, nothing shrinks. When you have two differing types of material, like a maple top and a mahogany body or whatever crazy tops they use, doesn't matter. They do it in such a way that you never have like a hard line. You never have any of that stuff because they've stabilized that wood as best as possible. Yeah. So yeah, interesting. Wood does make a difference. Yeah, in the construction of the guitar for sure. Yeah, absolutely. All the stability stuff we're talking about, tuning, everything. It's a huge deal. One of the things that he brought up, and he said it sort of in passing, but it's something that I think should be mentioned again, is people worry a lot about finish. And one of the things he talked about was the reason, in fact, they dry the fretboards drier than everything else. The reason is because you leave the fretboard open. The rest of the guitar is sealed. So it has a whole lot less opportunity to move because the guitar is sealed, because it is sealed and finished. It's not that the guitar will never move because it's sealed and finished, but it will move a lot less. It is a lot less susceptible to moisture. And I think people don't think about that like the body of the guitar, it doesn't really matter. It won't move around. The neck, we don't want the neck to move too much because we don't want to have it adjust it, and it's thinner and it's got tension on it and etc. So you want to make sure that that is as stable as possible. And if it's got a rosewood fretboard or some sort of open pore, wood that you don't have a finish on, like other than maple, then it's going to be open to the elements, and the front of that neck is going to be open to the elements. Pretty interesting. And then his production manager started talking about the difference between each guitar. And this is where the Tonewood freaks lose me. Because, yes, I agree that every piece of every guitar makes a difference, right? Like there's some contributing factor to it. But the reason it doesn't matter is not because it doesn't matter. The reason it doesn't matter is because it doesn't make any difference when we're talking about one guitar to the next. Because the density of the wood, the weight of the wood, the density of the grain, there's no two that are the same. So there is by design and because of nature, there is no repeatability from one guitar to the next. So there's no point in splitting hairs over it because there's no repeatability from one guitar to the next. Now they can do all these things that they did to make it as consistent as possible, but it's just not going to matter because there are small differences with anything. So why chase it? It doesn't matter. Just let each guitar be what it's going to be. No big deal. And because he talked about the difference between, even in the same tree, in the same wood, in the same species, from guitar to guitar, everyone is different. And they have to look at everyone different. In fact, they have to address finishes different. And here's the thing, if one was truly better than the other, if there was something that was more stable than the other, if there was something that sounded better than the other, if there was something, etc., that's what they would use. That's what they would use. They would just use that. And so they don't. Why? Because they're concerned about creating a stable product. Paul Reed Smith never once called it Tonewood in the whole video. He talked about stability. He talked about construction methods. He talked about repeatability. He talked about manufacturing. This was a manufacturing video. This was not a tone video. This was a manufacturing video. And so I think that's really important to understand. Now, obviously, you can believe whatever you want about the Tonewood thing. I don't care. But it doesn't bother me. I don't really care. Like, I think it's cool that everybody's a little different on that. I don't hold it against you. I don't have a negative or positive thought about it. I don't. I disagree, but I don't care that you think different than me. I think it's awesome. But the technical side of this is very, very interesting. And I'm stoked because as a, I'm not like a PRS, like huge fan or anything. Cause I have a couple of them, but like, I don't like go out and get the latest one. And I don't, I have a Silver Sky. I love it. And I have a Fiore and I love it. But it made me reappreciate again how good that guitar really is. I went and picked it up and I'm like, man, yeah, you're right. This thing is really good. It's really stable. It's really excellent. Yeah. One of the other things too that I thought was interesting is that a lot of their colors came from ugly wood. They just didn't want to waste wood, and so they came up with colors that would look good on that wood. And that's neat. You know why? Because it's not tone. Paul Reed Smith said, we did this because we wanted to use this wood, even though it was ugly. And technically, you could get into the grain was different, so the guitar was going to sound different, blah, blah, blah. He cares more than anything about consistency and stability in his product. That is what he cares about. Even with the pickup stuff, with doing all his TCI thing and like measuring everything and documenting everything, that is consistency and repeatability. If the guitar sounds good, it is good. We have established that many times. It doesn't matter how much it costs or how little it costs. If the guitar sounds good, it is good, right? But consistency and repeat, and there's a lot of people, I'm not going to say anybody, but a lot of people can pull that off once or twice. But there are very few people who can scale that up to PRS, which isn't actually that big. They're the smallest of the big three. And do it consistently and do it to that level of quality and that consistently. Okay, it costs money. It does. But all of those processes cost money. And I think it's really interesting. I love manufacturing processes. That's like one of my favorite subjects to like dive into. I will watch a factory tour of just about anything, right? Like it doesn't matter what it is. If it's, I don't care. Like whatever remember those old shows, like How It's Made or whatever, I would always watch that. I even when I was a kid, even like on Mr. Rogers, we'd go over to the picture frame and like they would show how stuff was made. I was like super into it. I love manufacturing processes. And that's what this discussion was. It had nothing to do with tone. He is concerned, like I said, about making a guitar that works. And that's really neat. That is really, really neat. I was super into it. And I was really surprised. That video is one that I scrolled past a bunch of times, like, this is going to be stupid. And I turned it on and I immediately saw him tapping on wood. And I'm like, oh my God, here we go. And then the rest of it was like, oh yeah, this is really smart stuff, man. This is smart stuff that even if other guitar builders are not doing, or they are doing, they're not talking about it in the same way, which I think is cool. And he gets props for that. Let's see. I bought a slab of wood for a live edge bar, and I left it in a location it was going for a few months so it would adjust the humidity before I epoxied it, but it wasn't enough. I can only imagine how hard this would be in guitar making. When you're talking about very high tolerances, see, that's the thing. Wood does move. You're right. I'm having a deck built right now, and there's some wood laying on the ground out there. And even just in the humid, you can see it move, right? It's not very dry, obviously. It's kiln dried, but that's not very dry. But you can see it move. And you're like, why doesn't a guitar move for years and years and years? Because not that much, because of all the work that goes into it ahead of time. It's really, really interesting. It's a vibrating system. Okay. So you need to learn how an electric guitar works. Really is what it is. Let's see. Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions about how an electric guitar works. What happens is people conflate acoustic instruments and electric instruments, and they're totally different. An acoustic instrument is a drum. Okay, acoustic guitar is a percussion instrument. It is a drum that moves air. An electric guitar is an electric transducer. It's an electric motor. Okay, it changes kinetic energy into electricity. And so the way you approach everything is different. It's just a completely different thing. Nobody cares. I agree. Boy, a lot of people getting pretty passionate about this. The longer you have inventory and the more that inventory costs you, inventory aging increases the cost of goods. Exactly. Interesting video, but wouldn't it be easier to do a double blind test? It had nothing to do with tone. I'm telling you. See, this is the thing. I'm going to do a podcast all about. I almost did it today. I'm probably going to do it next week. How much of guitar making and pickup making and this whole community and industry, how little of it actually has to do with tone. Most of it doesn't. Why? Because it doesn't matter. Because you're going to take the tool and you're going to make it do what you want it to do. You're going to get pedals. You're going to get a different amp. You're going to mod it. You're going to use knobs. You're going to do whatever. You can make it do what you want it to do. When it comes to actual tone on an electric guitar, the margin, for example, the reason this Tonewood thing has always been this back and forth deal is because it's within the margin of error of any conversation. Because it can't be, I'm sure that somebody could measure it, but nobody wants to pay to do it. If I could get funding to do it, I would absolutely hire an engineering firm and some scientists, and I would do it. I just can't afford to do it. But I totally would. If I had like Mr. Beast money, that's, if I was like, my channel was like, I don't know, like the size of Cletus McFarland's or something, instead of buying a racetrack, I would literally pay the money and have this done. If it was a couple $100,000, I would pay it and I would do it. But nobody wants to do it because everybody knows it's stupid. Not that it doesn't matter, but that it doesn't matter. Why? Because it's this minute of a difference, even if there is one. Therefore, you just play. Like, argue about this less and play more. Right? That's really all it is. And really, the bottom line is the maple fretboard sounds different than mahogany, ebony, and rosewood. Yeah, it's probably brighter, huh? Because it's like whiter. Dylan, off topic. Have you tried one of your P90s in the middle position on a Nashville tele configuration? It's kind of too much for that spot. If you wanted something kind of fun in that situation, I would put an Enduro there, but I wouldn't put a P90 there. It's too much in that spot. The best woods to make guitars from are the ones that buyers will actually buy. So what's interesting about that is, Don, thank you for that. Don, you have a package coming to you, by the way. What's interesting about that is he's not wrong. Okay. So that's why I brought up the whole ugly wood, different colors, trying not to waste wood. All through guitar building history, the things that were chosen, the parts that were chosen, the components that were chosen, were not, most of the time, I would say 90% of the time, the parts and pieces chosen for the components themselves were not chosen for tone. They were chosen based on cost and availability to manufacture. And they were also, and the designs were also chosen based on ease of manufacture. I always talk about the shape of the horn on a Stratocaster or a Telecaster. It's because a 2-inch drum sander fits in there and you don't have to sand it by hand, right? That's why it's shaped that way. There's no technical reason except for that's why it's shaped that way. The reason why that Fender little curve comes down off the top of the fretboard is because they have a drum sander that actually sands the top of there's a drum sander that actually sands the top of the headstock before they paint it. And you can just like go in and out, and that radius hits the end of that fretboard right there, and it fits it. That's why it's that shape. Like, it's that kind of stuff. The material that is in, everybody wants to go on and on and on about like bobbin material and all this kind of crap. So you take like a Telecaster bridge pickup, right? Steel is what the base plate is. Everybody thinks it's copper, but it's not. Copper plated steel is, the reason it's copper plated steel is because copper, they were going to use nickel because nickel, it takes longer to corrode, but it's too expensive. But they had copper, which goes on to steel before nickel goes on. So I can't remember the entire process. One of my buddies chromed for a living, and he told me all about this. But It's steel, and then there's copper, and then there's some other stuff, and then there's nickel, and then chrome goes over it. And chrome is actually clear, and chrome over nickel is what gives you the mirror, right? But underneath that is copper. It's cheaper than using nickel plating. It has nothing to do with tone. Nothing to do with tone. We don't actually, well, we use it now. It depends on availability. If somebody has copper in stock, I'll use it. If they have regular bare steel, I'll use it too. Doesn't matter. Doesn't change anything. Nothing at all. Those are the kind of things. The 4-bond material that Fender pickups are made out of, that is actually an insulation. It's called fish paper, and basically it's rubber impregnated paper that is like rubber resin impregnated paper that is made to insulate between conductors. So like in a transformer, it's that paper that they put between plates and stuff. It's different thicknesses, whatever. It works. And it's stable enough to laser cut it or stamp it or however you want to make it. And then it holds pressed magnets very well, and it works. There's no tonal consideration to that whatsoever. It's manufacturing ease. That's what it is. So, a lot of this stuff is just, just kind of made up, really. Maple has more fundamentals. Funny. I like my guitar under 7 pounds. Me too. I like my guitar at about 6 pounds if I can help it. I like them really, really light. And I like them totally resonant, bro. Do you keep any data on your pickup making processes? Yeah, I have secret notebooks that you're not allowed to look at. I do. Yep, and I've been training some lately, and so I've been having to go back to that stuff. Yep, definitely. Yeah, interesting stuff, man. It's a really interesting thing. I would love to do a whole podcast based on that, because it's one of those things where people will assign myths to just about everything. But on the manufacturing side, and it really comes down to a lack of understanding of manufacturing, which is totally fair. If it's not your thing and you're just a consumer, which most people are, it's no big deal. It's just normal, right? You click the button, Sweetwater brown truck brings you your guitar, and boom, there it is. You don't know how they made it. You don't know all the work that went into it. And so you see one for $200 from China, and you see one for $2,000 from Nashville, and you're like, what the heck's the difference there? It doesn't make any difference to me. Okay, I get it. Makes sense. 100%. Makes total sense why those things hit that way for certain people. Others who dive into it some more and really understand what's going on there, then can assign value to those various processes and those various time and materials and all that kind of stuff. Now, does that mean that it's worth it for everybody? No, it's not worth it for everybody. Any expensive thing or premium thing isn't worth it for everybody. It's only worth it for the folks that get it. And if you don't get it, it's okay. It doesn't make anybody better or worse than anybody. It's just you're not into it. I've got certain things that I just don't care. Like, I don't care about, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I try to buy the best of everything when I can. So I can't really say that, but I'm trying to think of something I don't really care about. I don't know. Socks. They just got to be comfortable. If they wear out quick, I just buy new ones. You know what I mean? Like, I don't buy like I don't know, super fancy socks. There's my example. There's so much mythology that surrounds early guitar making and tone, yet it's so much more practical and simple than the applied mythology. See, that's okay. You bring up a good point. So, and I've said this before. Those of you that have watched this on a regular basis, watch our videos on a regular basis will know that I say this. This is a smartphone, right? This is a smartphone. Does a lot of stuff. Does more stuff than the space shuttle, right? The guitar is the exact opposite of this. It's the dumbest thing. It is the dumbest. If this is smart, a guitar is the dumbest technology. It is a simple passive, in the case of a passive guitar, not an active one, passive LC circuit with the most rudimentary electronics and the simplest physics ever. It is an electric motor. That's all it is. It is a resistor, it's a resistor, a voltage divider. It's a variable resistor, a voltage divider, and a capacitor, right? And a coil and a magnet. That's it. That's it. It is the easiest thing. And there's so much mythology and dumbness about it. Now, does that mean that nothing matters? Obviously not. Obviously not. But here's what happens. I think what happens is, because I make pickups for a living. Obviously, it matters. I know because we do it all the time. So, we were just winding in there today. This particular pickup we made had, I don't know, 1,000 more winds on it than another one. It was a different humbucker, right? Different format. Well, different model of humbucker, and it did a whole different thing. Different magnets, sounds totally different. It's not a very big change in the grand scheme of things, but it makes a big difference. And it sounds totally different. So there are things that matter, saddle material and all that kind of stuff. But the problem is that the further you get away, here's the thing about an electric guitar, okay? So it's an electric motor. So what do you need in an electric motor? You need a transducer, an actual electronic transducer, which basically is the pickup itself and the magnetic field surrounding it and the string, okay? The further you get away from that, and I think this is something that people don't think about, that's the center of an electric guitar. The further you get away from that, the more the effect on what you're doing diminishes. I mean, physically, like between the nut and the saddle is where all the business happens on an electric guitar. Anything outside of that, it just rolls off very, very, very quickly. Now, does that mean that it's zero beyond the nut and the saddle? No, absolutely not. But it's just so diminished outside of that people just, what happens is they weight the priority of these things incorrectly in an electric guitar. The reason they do that is because they think it's an acoustic guitar and it's not. Where an acoustic guitar, the entire guitar matters, right? So that's the thing. The entire acoustic guitar matters. Where on an electric guitar, it does, but the percentages are way different. Funny thing is, the more simple fuzz pedal circuit, the more that small tweaks to values of components in the circuit change the sound coming out. No, you're right. And the same thing happens on a guitar, right? So that's a great point too, because on a guitar, if you change the value of the pots, you're changing one thing. Every time you change one thing on an electric circuit, the electrical circuit of a guitar, it matters. The value of a pot, the value of a cap. Here's why. It's because people think of this. This is an excellent point. People think of, so thanks for bringing it up, Curtis, the guitar as a bunch of components together. Okay. But a passive guitar is a simple LC circuit, inductor with a resistor and a voltage divider and a capacitor. Okay. And every component, that whole thing is the circuit. They're all pushing and pulling on each other. Okay. So it's a network that pushes and pulls on each other. People think of the components as different ones, but really your guitar circuit is from the string when it vibrates to the cable where it enters the amplifier. Okay. Or a pedal with a buffer in it or what, the first amplifier. So preamp, buffer, or whatever. The cable's part of that system too, because it's a parasitic system. Every component is drawing off of, filtering off in some way, whether it be resistance as it approaches zero, in the voltage divider, which is the volume pot. The capacitor, because even on 10, there is still some signal shorting to ground through that capacitor. Um, the magnetic field changes with magnet shape change, strength change. The coil changes the difference, the magnetic field. So that resonant peak that Paul Reed Smith actually talked about in that video, every time you change any one of those components, that thing moves around a little. Okay. So if you change a pot, you change a cap, you change a magnet, you change wine count, you change the height of the thing, any little change, that resonant peak moves just a little. So it's a whole net, and actually the length of your cable or the quality of your cable will fall into that too, because it's just a big filter once it hits about 15 feet. So all that stuff works together. It's one big system. So that's why we talk a lot on this channel about kind of zooming out and seeing the whole thing and understanding the entire thing. Now, obviously, mechanically, the guitar needs to work, because if you have fret buzzes and you have all this kind of stuff, somebody tried to tell me today or yesterday, they're like, yeah, well, when you fret a note, the nut doesn't matter anymore. And I'm like, I know that's BS, but I've never actually tried that. So you know what I did? I took my PRS, my Silver Sky. Actually, this was while I was watching this video. And I tuned it up and I just played some open notes. So even just play an open note on an E chord. You can do this if you want. Play an open note on your high E. Just pluck the note. Like, just get a pretty good, you know how hard it is to get a good repeatable note, right? But just get a decently repeatable note where you're going ding, ding, ding like this. And you're kind of measuring sustain and loudness and stuff, right? And then go ahead and fret the fifth fret, let's say. And then do it again. And just do it again for a while. Ding, 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 like this. Okay. Now, take a piece of paper towel and lift up your E string and put a piece of paper towel under your E string. Now go ahead and do the same thing with an open string. It's going to totally kill it. Okay. And then fret the fifth fret and do it again. And you're going to notice it's worse, even on a fretted note. So when people say, well, once you fret a note, it doesn't matter anymore. It's BS. It's BS. Yeah, interesting stuff. I was playing around with that last night or this morning. I was like, I got to try this. I know it's true because I've messed with it on with different nut shapes and different nut materials and stuff. But I like to do an extreme to it. Put a piece of paper under there. You're like, I'm going to try that. So put a piece of paper under your nut and then fret the fifth fret and then do it with and without it. And you'll be like, oh yeah, quality of the nut matters even when you fret a note. It's kind of interesting. Nothing's important. Let's see. Pollard Smith has been making guitars for almost 50 years, so I put my faith in knowledge and experience. He is right. Wood matters. I agree. That video was really good. It was really good. I was really really impressed with it. I didn't want to like it because a lot of his stuff that he says I think is kind of marketing BS, but I really, 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 I was like, you know what? I have to talk about this because people have probably heard me say that before. I'm just, oh, come on, here we go. But I was like, no, this is really good. And I'm glad. I love it when a company like that wants to share that stuff. I mean, we do that all the time, right? Like, how to make pickups and all kind of stuff. But for a big company to take you in there and be like, look, this is how we do this so that these guitars work and they're stable and they stay in tune and these are why they're better. And I'm like, this is neat. Fender doesn't make these kind of videos. And I think the reason is because he's still there, right? If this was 20 years from now and he had retired and it was run by a board of trustees or whatever, you probably wouldn't see this stuff. But because he's still there, he still owns it. And he's like, no, I'm going to go on YouTube and talk about my guitars just like anybody else would. I think that's really neat. I was super stoked with that. Yeah, I dig it a lot. Let's see. Yeah, I'm all about it. Cool. Well, you guys, this was really fun. Thanks for hanging out. I love this stuff. I think it's cool. If you guys have input about what you might want to talk about on Tuesdays, I was thinking about that too. Go ahead and put it in the comments, and we'll try to do it. We also started a second YouTube channel. I'm not like trying to make it huge or anything, but I thought it would be fun. One of the things I get hammered on, I guess, from time to time is people thinking I'm negative. I'm not at all. I'm not as a person, anything. But I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go through comments on that YouTube channel. So it's just Dylan Talks Tone with the number 2 after it. So Dylan Talks Tone 2. So like after a week later, after the Monday videos, a lot of times I'll go through the comments over there. I've done it a couple times now. It's really fun. Kind of get to know what people are thinking, get to know what they're concerned about, maybe details that I missed in the video that we go back and kind of visit when we go through that stuff. So it's kind of fun. And then some other stuff. I've been sharing just some other things that are related to the channel, but not worth making a whole video for this channel, you know? And there's no production value over there. I just sit in front of my computer with a webcam. No big deal. So dig it. Yeah, man. Let's see. Sorry to bug you here, but would you say that P90 would still be too much in the center on a telly if the bridge was a 13K Alnico 2.5 rail pickup? No, maybe not then. No, maybe not then. Maybe it would work then. Isn't it true that acoustic guitar woods need to be as thin as possible to allow it to vibrate and carry the tone of the wood? How is it a thick, solid body coated in glossy paint matter? So, again, this goes back to what the job of the guitar is. An acoustic guitar is a drum. It's a percussive instrument. An electric guitar is not. There you go. Guys, been fun. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you in the next video.